Ever wonder why the main character of these games always has to have a big red sword as their default weapon option? Honestly, I cannot tell you, but regardless, the Swordfighter has been one of the most standard attack-based classes in the series, usually being pretty well balanced in all types of offensive prowess. Swordfighter in this game is no different, possessing a variety of strong options to take advantage of. In this video, I want to discuss the Swordfighter class, talk about strengths and weaknesses, and showcase what I believe to be the best setups and how to use the class effectively. This video will be free of story spoilers up until the last few minutes, where I do want to talk a bit about a unique mechanic unlocked later, and I will give warning before that happens. If you enjoy these guides and want to see more class guides for Xenoblade 3, including Soulhacker, which everyone has been asking about, then please subscribe to the channel because it helps out so much. Let's get into it. Since this is one of the default 6 classes, that means Noah is going to be your best option for the class, since he will be able to get a weapon upgrade from a side quest that will give him a statistical advantage over anyone else using the class, and can reach one of the highest attack stats in the game. The standard arts at your disposal are Ground Beat, which is a very simple physical area of effect attack with a pretty strong damage ratio of 440%. Swordfighter arts are timer-based cooldowns, which makes its arts a bit less spammable overall, since this has a 22-second cooldown, which can feel a bit slow. Speaking of 22-second cooldowns, the second art is Sword Strike, which inflicts break if you attack an enemy from the side. Now, breaking enemies is very important to lead to combos, and for attacker classes, using positional effects will charge your talent art, so that makes this a very important tool in your kit, both for talent recharge and for combo access. It isn't the strongest attack, but that's fine, since the purpose of the attack is to break the enemy, which will lead to topple and stop the enemy from doing anything for a bit. I'd recommend having this art at all times. Edge Thrust is an 11-second recharge art that has a low power multiplier of only 180%, but gives a large damage boost when attacking from behind. This is worth having for the short cooldown positional effect alone, as you will get a lot of additional damage from this art compared to others because of the shorter cooldown, and you can charge your talent art up much faster with this equipped. This will mean that you need to alternate being to the back and side of an enemy, but that shouldn't be too difficult unless the enemy is just huge. Another one of the arts I'd suggest running at all times, especially on Noah, who gets extra benefit from the talent gauge. Noah's next art is Air Slash. This art is on a 19-second cooldown, but has a strong damage multiplier of 425%, and gives a damage bonus boost when the art is cancelled into. This is your strongest art and a great consideration if you're fighting a single enemy and don't need the area of effect. Swordfighter's final art is Shadow Eye, which will cut your aggro in half and grant an attack up buff on a 29-second cooldown. Going to be honest, this is not worth losing the extra attacking art slot because of the long cooldown and the fact that attack up buffs could be applied from party members instead. Halving aggro could be useful, but with the setup I'm running, you should never really be taking aggro anyway. As such, I'm not really a huge fan of this art. For the master arts, I'd say there isn't any definitive arts that you'd absolutely want to run no matter what, since there are a lot of good options on the master art side, but I do like Aerial Slash for being a strong damage ratio and high critical hit rate, and because it's funny when you have Aerial Slash and Air Slash linked together. You can get good chain attack damage with this link as well. Violent Flurry is another art that I like for being another strong physical attack with a nice damage bonus effect that lets you ignore defense half the time, making it a pretty strong art for that alone. Both this and Aerial Slash have cooldowns of 5 cancels for recharge, and are pretty easy to get before your circle arts come back up in most situations. The final master art I'm running is Maximum Voltage. This is a stance effect that grants a flat 20% boost to all damage, which is great, and it also makes attacks unblockable, which is very nice for a physical attacker who would prefer not to be blocked by enemies. Stances do not count as buffs, and only one can be active at a time, and I think this is a pretty good stance to have for an attacker. Some other arts that you may want to consider are Night Hunter over Maximum Voltage for a slightly higher damage boost when attacking from behind, Way Home for a strong damage ratio burst art that isn't reliant on a talent gauge, No Love Lost for its physical defense down debuff, and Jackal Claws if you want a very similar art to Aerial Slash just with a slightly worse weapon. The standard talent art on Swordfighter is Overclock Buster, which has a pretty high damage ratio and can do some pretty strong damage to dazed enemies, and while a decent damage art, you likely won't be running this over Infinity Blade or something else. Infinity Blade gives a 1000% power multiplier and always pierces defense, making it strong in basically every situation. The default skills of the class are Sharp Eye, which boosts dexterity by 50%, giving you much higher accuracy than you would have otherwise, and basically ensuring you'll never need accuracy up against even the most evasive enemies. I like this skill a lot for that alone, even if it's a pretty simple skill. Covert Attack will reduce all aggro generated by 65%. This is actually another pretty nice skill because it, along with something else, will allow you to basically go wild with damage without worrying about ever taking aggro from a tank. It's a lot better than you might think in this game compared to previous games where it didn't matter as much. Cypher Edge boosts critical hit rate by 50%. This raises it from 24% to 36%, which is pretty nice, and gives him a solid critical hit rate to work from to take advantage of critical damage bonuses. And finally, In Spirit. This gives a 150% damage boost when fighting unique monsters or boss enemies. That means for basically every fight that matters, you get a strong and much needed damage boost for the class. This is very much appreciated to make it strong as an offensive class. All 4 of these skills serve some purpose, and while the first 3 skills aren't the most amazing effects in the world, they also still are useful and synergize well with the kit to create a consistent damage dealer that can function well in all fights. Very well rounded as an attacker, likely as intended. For master skills, I am currently running Capable Hands, which fills the talent gauge by 100% at the start of a battle. Noah in Swordfighter is a character that gets a lot of benefit out of the talent gauge more so than almost any other class and character, and I highly recommend running this at a later point in the game when you can make this skill reach 100%. If you're still early game, this skill may not feel the most impactful and can probably be replaced. Critical Strike will boost critical damage by 50%, which with Noah's increased critical hit rate, fits together nicely to give him a nice independent multiplier to damage and is definitely worth running as a damage-based ability. My last master art is Dynamite Spirit, which boosts damage by 60% when above 90% health. Swordfighter is a good class for basically never getting aggro, and if you're directly controlling, it should not be too difficult to avoid area of effect, meaning you should always get this damage boost almost all of the time. As such, it's a nice skill to increase damage further. Another good consideration for a skill would be Universal Annihilation to get a large damage boost to toppled and launched enemies if you want to focus on combos. Eye for weak points to reach a very high critical hit rate over the course of longer fights. Maniac for a 50% damage boost to higher leveled enemies. And some other options might be good choices as well, depending on the situation. For gem setup, I am running Steel Cleaver for a general attack boost of 70 to increase damage further. Dispersed Bloodlust, which reduces aggro generated by 45% when using arts, and combined with Swordfighter's already strong aggro reduction, this basically ensures you will never take aggro unless basically everyone else dies and loses it. For that reason alone, I actually like this gem for Swordfighter. Analyze Weakness rounds out the kit for another strong boost to critical damage. Empowered Combo can be a great option to do some insane damage with arts, but I don't know which of these 3 I'd want to replace for it, since replacing Dispersed Bloodlust for this can actually make you take aggro if your AI tanks aren't very good. This also doesn't apply in chain attacks, so if you just want big chain damage, keep that in mind. For accessories, I am running the Saturni Rings for the largest possible attack boost of 40%. This gives you the highest base value possible for everything else to multiply by, so very much worth running. The second slot is currently a Rainbow Feather Band, but you can consider this any of the enemy-specific damage boosts of 100% depending on what you're fighting because they are very strong effects. You may also want to consider Lune Rings if you're not using it on someone else to give a 100% damage boost to Fusion Arts, which can do a lot as well to your total damage. In the final slot, I have a Break Brooch to lower enemy break resist by 25%, just to get some higher chances to break enemies, especially more resilient enemies that have higher resist. You can replace this with another damage boost if you don't care about breaking, or with a different support accessory if you feel like that would be more beneficial. Overall, though, I find Break to be a very useful effect and combos to be a very strong option, so I like running this a lot. If there's any party synergy you may want, I'd suggest just running all of the party-wide buff skills at least on one of your 6 characters, and make sure all your characters have access to combo options if you're planning to use break strategies. Master Arts can be great for this purpose as well. There are some attack buff field effects you could consider, like with Uni's Medic Gunner, but typically the AI will be near the rest of the team when you're to the back of the side and the side of the enemy, so I don't think you need to worry about that too much. With all that done, let's take a look at how to use the class practically with this build in mind. So I actually had probably a better fight showing this off before this run, but I ended up having something that was a spoiler in my party without realizing it until it was too late, so I ended up having to re-record this part, which is a little unfortunate, but not really a huge deal. So, I figured this would be a good enemy to show off this kit against because of Noah having the dexterity buff on this kit, because I think this is probably the most evasive enemy in the game total, this bird thing. Perilwing Ryuho. I don't know how to pronounce that at all, but regardless, it also can kind of showcase how the positional effects work, how you might need to use the dash effect to move constantly from the back into the side of the enemy. And our AI is kind of just off over in their own little corner here, so I can get the 60% damage boost when above 90% health at all times. Mio is unfortunately already dead because the AI is not the best at using their abilities to stay alive. But it doesn't really matter because she survived really fast because of the healer options. Healers are actually good in this game, I cannot believe it. Because I think they probably expected you to die a few times with how much damage some of these characters do. I suppose my general strategy here is just try to get all the positional bonuses I can and take advantage of my talent art when that's available. And also make sure I'm canceling into air slash aerial slash as much as I can. And that will give you a lot of damage if it crits. That did not crit that time, but still over 78,000 on one of the hits. So that's pretty decent for a non-crit, especially because crits can do like over double that if you get it. And the positional effects aren't too hard to get at all. And as you can probably see, I haven't taken aggro this entire time, regardless of how much damage I'm doing, which is pretty insane. And really showcases just the power of the aggro reduction built into this kit, that you can just do a ton of damage and not take aggro, just like that. Where I just did over 170,000 with like 2 hits there, which is a really big amount. Infinity Blade's back up, so I'm going to use it again. I haven't decided whether I actually like the manual or automatic interlink for computers yet, which one would be better. Because the computers will use it to save themselves, and they usually activate it at level 2 or 3 otherwise, which is pretty decent, but there are some times you don't want them to use it, especially if like it's your healers that you want to keep other people alive. Like right now, Tyon is dead, and my other 2 healers are in an Ouroboros form right now, so they can't do much of anything. Regardless, I went to an Ouroboros form myself because I can. Unfortunately, the Ouroboros form does not have aggro reduction, so I actually have aggro now. Because I wanted to take advantage of my interlink level 3 since I had gotten it charged up from all the fusions I did. Using a power charge, Glorious Wing, and this Mega Spinning Edge can do a lot of damage. I also finally get a break here. It's not even with my actual break art on my ground kit, it's just with the Ouroboros kit. And as soon as we get out of that, aggro changes again. I don't know how aggro works with Ouroboros forms and how it changes, but it does seem to work slightly differently since I no longer had aggro there after coming out of the Ouroboros form, so I assume it's probably some separate counter or measure there. And Ouroboros forms are completely invincible, so that's nice. So I end up going into a chain attack here after the Ouroboros form ends. I've got a break right now as well, so I can go into a topple if I want to. Since this is hard mode, my chain attack damage ratio is still pretty gimped, but luckily I do have enough damage with Noah and Uni here to be fine regardless. And there's also the fact that Asher is my hero of choice here, which will make this a lot easier overall. Unfortunately, since I had kind of bad hero options for the first order round, and I end up picking Senna, who's offensive, I end up going over the cap for the first round with just 2 attackers, which normally does not happen, and I didn't even think about it at the time as well. Fortunately, it doesn't end up mattering too much, though. I can just use Noah again here, get some pretty high damage off of that, even without the cancel damage bonus. And then I use Senna to get a attack buff on everyone. And then I go into Ashura. Now, if I had thought about this a bit more before doing this, I would have used Tyon instead of Senna there to topple, and then Ashura to launch, because I think she's my only source of launch right now. But I did not think about it at the time, so I did not get the extra damage from that, but fortunately it doesn't end up mattering because I get enough damage with just Noah and everyone else, so that's very nice. I want to try to finish this with Uni Tyon because they have the strongest finisher if you have a bunch of buffs on your allies. Especially if you have the buff skill linked to Tyon's Ouroboros as well. So that's what I'm going to be aiming for. I'm going to finish this round with Noah and try to get an amazing, but since he's only at 83 right now, it's probably not going to quite get me there. I think it was like 195% or something, which is a little unfortunate, but doesn't matter too much. And it is 195%. Now, if this was normal mode, this thing would have been dead a long time ago. But we're only at 505% damage bonus right now. Fortunately, not a huge deal, because we got 2 more rounds of this chain attack here. Gonna finish it off with a Tyon form and use more of Noah's strong abilities here. At this point, I think we'll be hitting for a pretty large amount of damage if he crits. So that's something that is very useful. And I can go ahead and use both of my other healers now, because we'll get everyone back next round for the Ouroboros round no matter what. I get power charge to everyone with Senna, and attack buff to everyone, so Noah hits even harder. That's honestly a better place to have Shadow Eye than on Noah himself. Just have it on someone who can pass buffs. And that way you don't have to use it yourself. So I just hit over 300,000 with both of those hits. I don't even think they crit. If they did crit, that would have been like over 700,000, which would have been really nice, but unfortunately I'm not quite that lucky. Fortunately, it doesn't end up mattering, though, because the last round of the chain attack should give me enough damage to finish this off. These chain attacks definitely last a pretty long time sometimes, but overall, I still think they're pretty cool. Very neat feature in this game, and really allows attackers to shine, especially if you can build up damage properly and just do a ton of damage. And right now, I've got a bunch of buffs on everyone. Noah just did over 1.5 million with one of those hits with only a 619% damage ratio, so you can see just kind of how powerful a lot of these arts can end up being with multipliers and critical hits. And of course, Tion's Ouroboros is going to easily finish it off. And that's basically going to be the end of this fight. Now, I do have to give a spoiler warning because there's something else I want to talk about. And it's going to be related kind of to the Swordfighter class and to Noah specifically. So if you do not want to see that, click off the video now. Thank you. So, just very briefly, the real reason you probably want capable hands, especially if you're using Noah with this, is Unlimited Sword, where you can draw a Lucky 7 immediately upon entering the battle. And with all the other damage bonuses you have, you are just going to absolutely annihilate. And even with the aggro reduction, you're probably still going to eventually take aggro just because of how much damage you're going to end up doing. You can get a bunch of cancels really quickly with this, apply debuffs and buffs really quickly and fast, and overall you'll just be able to just constantly spam these arts no matter what. And you also build up your Talon Art Final Lucky 7. And really, this buff is insane even on hard mode. I just wanted to quickly show it off, so I just went and followed our favorite monkey. And you'll be able to see just kind of how much you get overall. I'm already doing like tens of thousands of damage here, and we haven't even really used my Talon Art or anything yet. And this combines well with the Ouroboros form as well. It builds up Interlink really quickly. We're already at level 2, despite this being hard mode. And Final Lucky 7 just does massive amounts of damage, and you get some massive smash damage as well. So, I really think this is a broken application of capable hands, and definitely the best use of it, and one of the reasons I definitely recommend running it on Noah. So, if you have this, definitely run capable hands. It synergizes very well with the, you won't have your normal Swordfighter arts, of course, but it synergizes very well with the build I currently have on him as well. I find it to be very strong, at least. Smash combo especially is really strong. Now that it's about to run out, I'm going to very quickly activate Interlink, and this will give me bonuses while on Interlink as well. I'll have access to Origin Blade, which weakens all enemies, and you can apply Glorious Wings Power Charge to that as well, because why would you not be able to? We get a launch here. Doesn't really end up mattering too much. I'm just trying to show off the damage here. So Power Charge, Glorious Wing, or Origin Blade, I mean, just does a massive amount of damage, and he's basically almost dead at this point. You could easily chain attack and finish here. And I don't feel too much need to show off the rest of the fight. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory how strong this is. And this might be a reason to run cancel damage, but you also can easily take aggro even with all the aggro reduction just because of how much damage you'll end up doing. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Just to be careful if you plan to use this. That is likely going to cover it for this video, so once again, I welcome your feedback to see if you like this guide and if there's anything I might be able to change with this. And I hope I was able to teach you something like how to use Swordfighter effectively and get the most out of it. I really enjoy all the options this game gives you in combat and just all the unique setups you can run, and I do appreciate the fact that pretty much all the classes have some form of viability now. There's a lot more variety to the game rather than just running as much damage as you can like in previous games. And overall, I think this combat system is very fun. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like the video, comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please look forward to future guides, and have a wonderful and blessed day.